Hello and welcome to this new episode of Magic and Miracles with your host, Dr. Jennifer Schlüter, that is me, and today with Sam. Sam, please go ahead and tell us about your magic and miracles story that you have for us.
Sure. So this was a while ago when I was essentially drowning in pain, emotionally and physically, suffering from having suffered many years with endometriosis. And the magical moment arrived completely unexpected timing. I'd gone to a I'd gone to a retreat, a self-development retreat, specifically about wealth, essentially. So nothing to do with health, it would seem. And 4 days before this retreat, I had had one of my most recent surgeries. So I'd had laparoscopic surgery for the endometriosis. So when I went to this retreat, I was in a lot of post-op pain. Essentially, if the doctors probably wouldn't have let me go if they'd known, but I'm a bit stubborn and really wanted to go. I'd walked in on crutches and curled up because of the surgical pain. And it was a 3-day retreat. So the first day, the Friday, there was a lot of stuff to work through around the money challenges that the participants had. And I couldn't participate in much of it because I was in so much pain. Some of it was still stood up and everything. And I also wasn't mentally entirely in the room because I was just struggling so much, right? Counting down the moments till I could take some more painkillers, really. Managed to just about get through that first day. And in the evening at this particular retreat, there was a dynamic meditation. And I don't know if you've ever heard of a dynamic meditation. When we think of meditation, we normally think of the, eyes closed, going on a journey, very still, very quiet. But with a dynamic meditation, hence the name, it's moving, it's very active. It's not the still, quiet contemplation. So it involves jumping up and down. It involves, screaming into a pillow. It involves, stomping up and down, like crying, like all sorts of big, bold noises and movement. And I'd done one of these type of meditations before, and so I knew, given how badly the day had gone, that this was going to be a challenging night for me. And quite frankly, I expected to not get anything from it. So in this meditation space, everyone's got their eyes closed. I'm sat on a chair because I need to. And everyone around me starts doing the actions that's described by the facilitator as, say, these big, bold moments, movements. And I can barely rock side to side an inch, right? I get a bit upset thinking this is, I'm basically going to be sat here for the next hour and a half in this state. And then I sort of had I can only describe it as sort of like an out of body experience. It's the closest thing I can describe. And I pictured myself from the other side of the room. And watching myself move just, barely side to side, surrounded by these women who were able to really get into their emotions and express them and move them in the way that you're supposed to. Something about the contrast made me laugh. Hysterical laughter, in fact, because it was the realization that in this particular environment, in the setup that I was in, I was the one who looked like the odd one out. I was the one who looked really strange in this room comparatively. So it started me laughing, that proper belly laugh, uncontrollable, you don't think you're ever going to stop laughing kind of moment. And I probably spent a good hour plus just hysterical laughing, still not able to physically move. And meditation was over, headed to bed. It was late in the evening, didn't think any more of it. The next day, woke up and felt so different. If someone had told me I'd have had a body transportation, I'd have believed them. I was able to, practically skip out of bed. I didn't need the crutches, skip down to breakfast. I felt like $1 million. I felt like I could have climbed Everest. I was so full of vitality that I could take on anything. And I couldn't believe the difference from the day before. And I remember sharing on the mic in the room on the Saturday this difference and how I felt so different. And of course, all the people in the room had seen how bad I was yesterday, and I shared this moment of laughter. And that change in my physicality lasted not only through that day, but through the entire retreat and several days after. And the contrast was so big. I remember one of the participants, a lovely lady, she came up to me and very politely said, "I don't mean to sound rude, Sam, but did you make up the story about having had surgery like 4 or 5 days ago? Because seeing you yesterday and then your share today, I can't, my brain can't cope with the fact that you've just had surgery. Like it's just not possible. So don't mean to be rude. Are you fibbing?" And because it was so soon after surgery, I was able to lift up my t-shirt and show her that I still had the surgical bandages on, because the stitches weren't able to come out yet. That's how soon it was after. And it was only then that she believed it, because she was like, I don't understand how that's possible. What on earth was it about laughing yesterday that made the difference? And in that moment, my answer was, I have no idea, because I genuinely didn't in that moment have a clue why it made this difference. And that really sparked, because I'm something of a geek at heart, really, when I get really curious about things. So I had that same curiosity that this lovely lady had of, yeah, what was it? Why did that make a difference? And such a dramatic difference as well. And yeah, that really sparked the whole journey between how, movement and self-development and the internal mind parts of work can affect the physicality of something that wouldn't seem to be on the surface linked, but absolutely is.
That is such an incredible story. Wow. And so, in your research after, right, what did you find? Why on earth is laughter causing causing you to feel? I mean, obviously, laughter makes us feel better, but how do you go from such a drastic, or how's such a drastic change happening?
Yeah, great question. So it was at first a lot of trying to dig into it, because there isn't much research at all about endometriosis, unfortunately. There's some, but not a lot, and nowhere near the amount that there should be. So trying to find the link to endo itself and why that laughter changed was really hard to do. So I had to kind of widen the scope of what I was looking at. And that is where I came across some of the, the mind-body connection pieces, how the body keeps the score, and all of these kind of things that were based in science as well as people's experience. And there was quite a few conclusions came to from that particular moment. One is that definitely the link with the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. We know science-wise that the parasympathetic nervous system is where we heal. That is the part, that's where we get to rejuvenate and create new cells and do the healing that's required, be able to relax. It changes our stress levels, which also changes our cortisol, which changes our hormones, which changes how endo shows up. So there's a lot of links between how a change into the parasympathetic rather than the sympathetic nervous system impacts inflammation and pain, as well as allowing the body to go into a more healing, rejuvenating state. That's definitely one of the big conclusions that I drew from how that laughter, you can't really be in sympathetic nervous system and be laughing, right? Because it's that release of endorphins that calms things down. So that's one of the big conclusions I came to. And also having that moment to connect with myself, right? It wasn't my intention. My intention was just to try and get through the thing, quite frankly, because I didn't think it was going to be possible to do. But that also meant that there was no pressure. There was nothing to expectations to live up to. My whole expectation was just get to the end. And so I think that really took some of the brakes off and really just allowed me to lean into it. And again, that caused that healing. And since then, I mentioned the geek part. I've done so much research into that mind-body link and how much of a difference it can make to chronic and inflammatory conditions like endo. And there's so much about how we heal, meaning that a chronic condition can be so different, how it shows up in our lives. It's really quite extraordinary, and not just with laughter, with other healing modalities as well. It just so happened for me that spark, that first moment, that initial miracle was through laughter.
So after that situation, right, you felt so much better. But I'm sure there was still remainders of endo, right? Because it's a disease that, yeah, there's probably, yeah, there was remainder of that. So how then, because you did heal your endo, how did you then heal it after that, after researching all of that? Like, what exactly did you do? How did you heal it? Because to me, it is a miracle that you have healed endo, because
Mm-hmm.
it is like in my research also, I don't have it personally, right? But thanks to all the research that I've done, it's a disease or a condition that is like for some of them it's lifelong, for
Mm-hmm.
others it spreads throughout the whole entire body. It's a really nasty, nasty disease. So
It is.
how were you able to then heal it?
Yeah. So I started essentially experimenting on myself, which sounds bizarre, but that is the truth of it. As well as looking into how the self-development side of things would affect my endo on the back of this laughter experience, I was also looking into every other possible thing that was suggested about endo. And I did effectively treat myself like a research experiment for quite some time. And lots of things didn't work at all. Lots of things had a difference, but not like, big punchy differences. So the two biggest things that seemed to have the overall effect was the self-development work and releasing uh, beliefs, patterns, issues that are stuck in the body. Every time I did any kind of process where I would do some releasing on that, the difference in my endo symptoms would be very marked. And the other thing then was working on food and the chemicals in my environment and things like that, particularly in regards to following a cyclical based approach. So even some of the endo diets that are out there will suggest, eat this, more of this and less of that. And doing this high level experimenting, I say I was like literally tracking and noticing everything. It didn't seem to be that simple. And there's a great book I happened to come across, which was a really big help, which was that certain foods are helpful depending on where you are in your cycle. It's not as simple with something like endo to cut out this and have more of this. Like, it's not that simple. It's have more of this when you're in this part of your cycle. Have less of this when you're on that part of your cycle. Like, it's really specific to the cycle. So the combination of those two was making this biggest difference in my own endo symptoms. And I was noticing that all the work I was doing, that keeping on top of the food protocol side of things, as well as then constantly looking at this, releasing the beliefs and stuck patterns from the mind body connection, my endo was changing dramatically. Some months, quite miraculously, month by month on occasions, and built from there, went into sort of experimenting with friends and family, willing friends and family, and asking them can you try this and just let me know what happens, because I really then wanted to see if what I was experiencing was just a me thing or whether other people could get it as well. And again, I noticed that this combination of these two things seemed to make a difference for other people's pain and challenges as well. And not just pain, but other pieces. Somebody, a friend of mine, that was told she was infertile, which I also was told as part of my own endometriosis. She then was doing some of the work that we were talking about, and she sent me a positive pregnancy test, and it's like, oh, it was like the most exciting thing ever. And it really built from there. So then again, the geek side of me kicking in and looking at everything I could find, working on this, the somatic work, so that you can move things in a way that doesn't involve the consciousness and the ego, that can put the brakes on things. and yeah, built it from there so that I was able to work with my own endo and change how it shows up as well as for others. Essentially where it came through.
That's so incredible. Congratulations on that. That's really, really incredible. So she showed you a positive pregnancy test, and so now she has a child?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, quite a few years old now. I see the
Amazing. So it's
I
been a
see the
while.
birthday yeah, it's been a few years. I see the birthday posts pop up on Facebook, and every time I see the next year come along that he's older, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember the
Wow.
I remember the heartbreak of thinking that wouldn't happen, and then the excitement when she sent me that, oh, it's actually caught Sam. And I had similar myself. I was told I was infertile. I had to have huge amounts of fertility treatment help to have my first child, and that was challenging as those kind of things are for anybody who goes through that. And then my second daughter, my youngest, was conceived completely naturally, and the doctors were stunned, and they were like, "That we've seen what your insides have looked like. That should not be possible. You should not be pregnant." I'm like, "Well, clearly I am."
That's amazing. And also just showing people who just, oh, it shouldn't be possible, or, like, oh, you shouldn't be able to do this, or telling you like you're not able to do this, like showing that to people is incredible because I feel like doctors have been trained to not so much accept the magic and miracles, right? They have been trained to treat symptoms and treat pain and whatnot, but not so much look for the miracles and not so much to believe in the miracles. So I think you truly have a very, very miraculous story. And the funny thing being that this retreat was all about wealth. So
Yeah,
so it's
and then
not about
actually
health.
not about health, but then, and this is where for me magic really comes into the synchronicity of things. I love synchronicities. I think they are, the universe's way of telling us about the magic that exists. So one of the things I discovered much later on is from a body mind mapping point of view, wealth is held in the uterus and the gynae areas for women. So I kind of look back with that kind of knowing smile to the universe of, okay, so yes, it was billed as a wealth retreat, but it's no wonder that I had the health change when actually both things for me were stored in that same place. My endometriosis challenge and any wealth challenges are literally coded in the same place. So I do think there was a link. There was no way I saw it at the time.
Yes, the womb is the center of creation, so of course, like wow, amazing. And so what would you tell people who are wanting to experience magic and miracles themselves?
Specifically for endo, or just generally in all things, would you say?
Anything generally, wherever you want to take this. I'm going to leave this
Mhm.
open, so wherever you want to take this.
So for in general, it's I would say the leaning in to those synchronicities, the opening yourself up to the possibility, that sort of abundance mindset of these synchronicities are available to you and can land in your path. On that very generalized level for anybody looking to open themselves up to those moments. And the thing with those kind of moments, you don't realize it at the time, right? Uh, it's and that's some of the magic of it, right? Because in the actual moment there and then, it can look relatively ordinary. And say for me, all I did was laugh, you know? That in one sense, that's not that, you wouldn't think that was that exciting and that interesting, right? Somebody laughed for a bit, okay, so what? So in the moment, it didn't look interesting, but it's the ripple effects, and that's where the magic comes in. And so, be open to those happening, and then it's looking back that you can join the dots and they exist. And then for endometriosis specifically and other similar gynae conditions like, there's PCOS, fibroids, adenomyosis, there's a whole bunch of conditions that show up with similar challenges. It's that working with your cycle being really, really key. It's such a key part. I can't underestimate how important it is. And there'll be some people listening who will be suffering these things and go, oh, but I don't have a cycle because I'm, either postmenopause or birth control. But you absolutely do. Women even post-menopause still have a cycle. It's less obvious, but we do still have one. So it's being able to work with that rather than against it. And again, on a, how magic flows and how miracles flow, they flow. We use that word, we say things flow. And that flowing happens in a cyclical way as well, right? So working with our cycles opens up that possibility even more, right? It sort of opens that channel. And when working with the cycles, working on that, clearing anything that's in the path, again, that's what creates the flow. A river can't flow thoroughly if there's a big dam built in the way. And the same thing works in our lives and in our bodies. If there is a dam, proverbial or otherwise, the flow isn't happening. So clear that channel, clear that dam out the way, whatever that is. And the kind of work like that I and reach out, because I can give more specific tips depending on what the person's going through at the time. But yeah, working on those beliefs that get stuck very literally and very physically in the body, and allowing that, leaning into that parasympathetic healing system that opens up to these miracles happening. And I see this regularly now, which is extraordinary.
That is so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And is there anything that we haven't covered yet that you also do? Because we talked about how you help women with endo and with some other things as well. So is there anything that we haven't covered yet that you want to share what it is that you do?
Sure. So I can talk a little bit about the approach to it. So I have this methodology that I've created, which takes the women through a variety of steps, 5 steps in particular, and through those 5 steps, it opens up these channels and effectively allows these changes to occur, so that the endo can release and move. So the first one, for example, is reconnecting with the body, and that's really key, because when you're suffering with something like a chronic condition, it's very easy to shut yourself off from your body, to break that connection between the brain and the body, because the body hurts, right? If the body's causing you challenge, it's not unreasonable to understand why you kind of like, I don't want to hear it anymore, I don't want to know. But essentially, that building that reconnection back up, whenever we're experiencing pain or challenges with a chronic condition, it is our body telling us something, and shutting off the signal, shutting off those words, that message doesn't help the condition, it only hinders it. So that's the first step that I take women through, and that's one of the key pieces, and that's why it's the first one. And that can happen through a variety of ways. So I do one-to-one work and look and help women through things like limiting belief releases, inner child work, looking back at when memories are stored in the body and in the area that the endo is showing up, and changing the impact of those memories on the body and the mind, as well as quite a lot of somatic work. So do some great embodiment practices, and that's about moving the body without involving the mind. So I do that laughter version, whereas this is through movement of the body in a slightly different way. And sometimes that's really simple. It can be as simple as, breathing in a different way. We all breathe, and we all have to breathe. It's, a very essential part of us. But the amount of us who breathe in a way that's not conducive to healing is extraordinary, regardless of whether you're diagnosed with something like endo or not. So learning to do that in a different way, learning to walk in a way that supports the movement in the hips, so that the organs don't get stuck together to the same level that they do without doing that kind of walk. So endometriosis as a condition is a very sticky disease. The endometriomal cysts create organs to stick together and literally move in the body. So moving our body lubricates those organs in a different way, and we can reduce the likelihood of that stickiness happening. So it's pieces like that. It brings in that movement piece for the body to be in harmony with itself and to work in a much more flowing state. But also then the mind piece by breaking down those dams, right, and breaking down those barriers. So it's meeting the two together through this methodology that this podcast being about magic and miracles, the methodology itself I call the Embodied Alchemy Method. And some of that is because the alchemy piece is because of the magic pieces that occurred along the way, right? That seemingly made no sense at the time. And that's why that's part of the name for it, right?
Yeah. Amazing. And what would you say to people who want to believe in magic and miracles? Like, what is the one situation or anything else, like other than the laughing situation, that you want to share with people that will help them believe in magic and miracles?
Mm. So I mentioned I have a lot of synchronicity in my life, and that has happened more and more uh, as I have allowed it in, and as I have done some of this clearing work. So an example of that, I remember being held particularly through a process on something that for me was a big challenge. So I grew up very much told that anger was an emotion that I couldn't have. It was an emotion that was sort of, not allowed in our family. And because of that, I'd suppressed it down. Now I didn't realize that, of course. I remember almost bragging that, well, I don't do anger. I don't have anger. And I was very good at making people believe that because I believed it. And then one particular coach took me through a process. And when I first said to him, like, I don't do anger, he kind of looked at me as if like, uh-huh. Yeah, right, okay. And then I was like, no, I don't. I just don't feel it ever. It just doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. So we went through this particular process, which is actually one of the processes I now use. And as part of it, went to this inner child process and released the anger that was stuck. And the visualization that came with it was very it was very magic. It felt very very spiritual, very guided, very very heart opening as well, right? It was such a it's kind of one of those things that's hard to explain because it had that magic element to it, right? I can still remember it now, and it's quite some time ago, as though it was yesterday. Just that feeling of complete release and complete leaning into everything that's possible, and how good that felt. And after that particular process, the depth of change that I was able to go through on a holding back myself level and stepping into authenticity and things like that was so much bigger because I had released this massive pot of anger that I'd built up for 30 odd years. And as soon as that had moved, what was available to me was so much more. There were changes in my personal life. There was changes. It rippled into my family. My kids were having different responses to friends and school and all sorts. And in my work, professionally, I then was at that exact point was when I made a massive change professionally. Started doing more of this endo work, and was able to release the hold that other work I'd done previously was still having on me. So again, it was that ripples effect. In the moment, didn't seem that that extraordinary, but was so impactful that I can still feel it and remember it now, quite some time later.
Amazing, beautiful. And where would you say that, or where can people find you?
Of course. So I find me on my website, which is theendocoach.co.uk, and you can book a free call with me there, and we can chat through what's going on with you right now. I also am on Instagram and Facebook. If you on Instagram search Sam_the_Endo_Coach, and on Facebook it is the Endo Coach. And if you search them up, you'll be able to find me and drop me a message. And yeah, I'd love to have a chat.
Beautiful. Amazing. Thank you so much, Sam, for coming on and for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom and what it is that you do. Your work is so important and I love it. So really, really thank you so much. I appreciate you and your time.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.